Hello, my name is Jessica. Thank you for joining me today. In this video, we will look at the Teen Times, the debate section from January 31st. The issue number is 565, and the headline for the debate for this video is, should there be a mandatory retirement age? So let's jump right in and look more closely at this topic, right? My first question is, what is mandatory retirement? That's my first point. Well, this refers to the age at which persons who hold certain jobs or offices are required by industry custom or by law to retire. Typically, mandatory retirement is justified by the argument that certain occupations are either too dangerous or require high levels of physical and mental skills, right? So what is the U.S. policy? My second point. In the 1960s and 70s, many employers in the U.S. imposed mandatory retirement when workers turned 65. That was the retirement age. This slowly began to change after the U.S. Congress passed the Age Discrimination in Employment Act, which made it illegal to discriminate against people on the basis of their age. By 1986, mandatory retirement was abolished. Now let's look at what the pros are saying for this debate. Due to the ongoing economic recession, many older workers are not retiring or are re-entering the labor force. Thus, there have been greater calls to initiate this mandatory retirement law. The pros want a mandatory retirement law because they believe it will help the younger generation, eliminate the phenomenon of plateaued workers, which we will discuss later on in this video, and act as a safety precaution for certain professionals such as police officers and doctors. But what do the cons say? My fourth point. The cons believe that this is age discrimination and are thus against mandatory retirement. They believe that people who can and are able to work should work, and that people with experience should be able to pass their knowledge to younger people or the younger generation. They also don't think that people over the age of 65 are either infirm or incapable. Now, what are my views? What do you think? For this debate, I am going to side with the pros and say that there should be a mandatory retirement age. Alright, so let's look at the pros' first statement. Mandatory retirement, I believe, is a necessary evil. As older employees are forced out of the workforce, as older employees are forced out of the workforce, it creates space for new, younger employees. Now, my second point, the economic recession hit the 16 to 24-year-olds the hardest. Since the U.S. economy started deflating in December 2007, young people aged 16 to 24 have lost more than 2.5 million jobs, roughly 1/3 of all the jobs lost. This makes them the hardest hit age group of the recession. Now, although unemployment is widespread in just about every part of the global workforce, the most enduring harm is being done to young people who can't grab onto the first rung of the career ladder. Therefore, my third point, many believe that for people just starting their careers, the damage may be too deep and long-lasting, potentially creating a kind of lost generation. Studies suggest that an extended period of youthful joblessness can significantly depress lifetime income as people get stuck in jobs that are beneath their capabilities and qualifications. In addition, equally important, employers are likely to suffer from the scarring of a generation. The freshness and vitality young people bring to the workplace is missing. They are deprived of opportunities and experience and are thus losing motivation, which is my fourth point. In Japan, where this problem is rampant, people in their 30s who started their careers a decade ago, back in the 1990s, they account for 6 in 10 reported cases of depression, stress, and work-related disabilities. And my last point, let me give you an example of the retirement age in Uganda, a country in Africa. In 2010, the Ugandan government debated about reducing the retirement age from 60 to 55. The supporters of this plan cited that this would create unemployment opportunities for the youth, especially in mainstream civil service jobs. Out of the 350 15,000 estimated civil servants employed by the government, if the retirement age is reduced to 55 years, more than 15,000 civil servants will retire every year, thus creating opportunities for 15,000 Ugandans. Like this example shows, mandatory retirement opens up new job opportunities for less senior workers, which by extension opens up new entry-level positions and creates new jobs. As a result, this policy must be enforced. So let's take a look at the pro's second statement. And starting off on this slide, we are going to talk about the phenomenon of plateaued workers, which we discussed in the introduction, went over briefly in the introduction. Workers unlikely to ever be promoted above their level of responsibility in an organization are called plateaued workers. They tend to be competent because in most organizations, incompetent workers tend to be dismissed over time. However, let's look at the problems with plateaued workers. Due to factors such as discouragement and laziness, plateaued workers may become ineffective and develop various work dysfunctions. These older workers have little motivation to continue to work hard, which can decrease morale and clog promotional channels for lower-ranking employees. Now, therefore, there should be a mandatory retirement to prevent this problem of plateaued workers. It is then logical to force them to retire. In addition, new employees will provide new ideas and freshness, both of which may have been absent to these companies, right? And my last point, economic costs. Besides creating new jobs, mandatory retirement policies remove senior, high-earning workers and replace them with entry-level workers, which may save companies money in terms of payroll. Okay, so let's go over the final statement. This is my last slide. My first point, mandatory retirement for certain professions. Now, mandatory retirement is necessary for certain professions, such as police officers, doctors, firefighters, and pilots. This is because they are responsible for the safety of others, and thus it is crucial that they remain competent to do their jobs. And my second point, older people they have a physical decline, okay? These jobs, which I mentioned earlier, require high physical and mental skills and are too dangerous for older people. After a certain age, people's physical reflexes and mental acuity are more likely to decline. Let's take a look at truck drivers as an example. This is my third point. For truck drivers, driver fatigue is a major cause of catastrophic truck crashes. The Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration in the U.S. reports that as many as 4,000 Americans every year are killed in collisions with trucks, the big semi-trucks. Many of the truck drivers involved had little or no training, many were 65 or older, and many others had a history of alcohol and drug abuse. Now, due to the correlation of fatigue, slow reaction time, and aging, many are calling for a mandatory retirement for truck drivers at the age of 65. My last point, prevent detrimental effects. Mandatory retirement would protect against the detrimental effects that could be the result of mistakes or misjudgment by elderly professionals. Now, for these reasons, I believe that it's very important to instate a mandatory retirement age. So why don't you make your own arguments and debate with your friends and classmates? I hope you enjoyed the presentation. Enjoy the rest of your day, and I hope to see you next time. Thank you.